we had the pleasure of touring through earlier. I'm really excited to hear your take on your facility and really get the lowdown and hear from Mike about how all the equipment that he does works so effectively with what you do.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
The big benefit to this system at this place was the laying it on top of an existing and running building. It made it really, I guess, conducive for that environment and easy to put in, and didn't have a lot of interruption of the grow. We were able to kind of like bring it in on the fly in tandem with what we had.
Yeah, real time.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Look at this, right? This is for royalty here. We did
Do
this
your
just
stockholders know you have this?
We bring it out just for the stockholders.
This seems pretty luxurious.
This actually came with the building. I saw it used at another grow, and I was like, "Fuck, we have one of those." Yeah, and so we whip it on fancy tours.
Yeah, when
Royal Grow.
This is how you know you made it.
Now this place, one of the first things we did was this. There was that actually used to be the server rack right here. They had some stuff just kind of leaning on the rack and kind of falling off the wall. So we brought another rack in and got it cleaned up, and then brought in this here. So I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit, but essentially it's a way souped up version of what we had at the other spot, and it runs everything, It gives us all the info we need, and it lets me sleep at night. Lets Tony do his job, and lets us see how everything's tracking, and just make sure we're not out of bounds. You know what I mean? To us, it's about like, don't mess up, right? The plant's gonna grow. Like, you're not in there. Come on, you're not making a plant grow. We're just giving it what it needs and not messing up.
Just letting it grow, but making sure everything's right for it to hit max potential.
Yeah, and kind of steering it along the way. It's like you got a kid, you want him to grow up a certain way, you put him in certain courses, but you take care of the kid, The kid's going to grow, and you just give it what it needs, and it does the rest,
Excellent. So this unit gives you all the real-time information on what every room in the entire facility, including nutrients, including atmospheric. What does this give you in the grand scheme of things?
It'll give you anything you want. Right now, in most rooms, we're running light control, fogger control, dehumidification control, or we're interlinking with irrigation. And as we go down the hallway, we're bringing in the Batch-matic so we can dose with it as well. And then we've got some mixing operations. The only thing that isn't included is the HVAC in this building, because we have the train chiller outside, and it has its own building management system that's extraordinarily difficult to use. Sorry to cut you off, but like to change the temp on that is 20 minutes. In 20 minutes I can rebuild this whole grow in this Agrowtek.
Wow. So it's one thing you wish you could have integrated.
Yeah.
Well, so you can. So Chris is one of our earliest adopters of our new platform. I think he actually got one of the first production units of this controller. And since this controller has been out and been installed, we actually have a firmware update and a software update that you can connect into a building management systems. And we actually have a specific relationship with Train to work with the Train building management system. But this has Modbus capabilities and Modbus communication protocols. So the way it works with those types of systems is the Train building management system can actually pull this device and pull the data from our device, from our sensors into their system, and then command their devices using our logic.
Wow.
Well, thanks for holding out on me, Mike.
Yeah,
I had to bring him on this tour to get
clear.
Oh, sorry. It's in the mail, but we'll get there soon.
So that's amazing. Really, that's one of the cool things about Royal Grown to us, is like getting to connect with people and connect with these moments and see the evolution of everything. So the fact that you guys just like upped the game on how this controls the Train system, that's what this is all about.
And that's kind of like, one of the things we strive to do as a company is we try to have relationships with, when we find a good operator, we want to be involved with that operator, and we want feedback from that operator, because those are the people that are going to give us the best ideas and really steer the way development goes. At our core, Agrowtek is a manufacturing company. And to be a good manufacturing company, to stay relevant, we always have to be in R&D mode. And part of that development is getting feedback. So when guys like this get it early on, a lot of the way that the system works today and a lot of the features and functions it has today come from early units like this out there in the field, guys like him using it, pushing it different ways, and then us coming back and making things happen. So a lot of the stuff, the way that he integrates in his irrigation into this controller, helped define the way that we developed the BDX system, and then added in some of the updates on the BDX system that they're about to get installed here. So part of how we stay competitive is always being available to the operator and turning around, usually in real time, updates and feedback and results into something that's usable.
That's amazing. That's so much of our stance at Royal Gold too, is wanting to be on the ground, involved, getting back and forth feedback, working with the growers for the R&D. I love that you, Chris, are working so well with your manufacturer to get what you want out of your machinery and to get the very best cannabis out of your facility. At the same time, you're providing value back and forth for a company that you value. I think that's really cool.
It's definitely a two-way street, and Mike's been with us since day one, and we've been developing a lot of things. And then as this industry has evolved, a lot of people have come to us with, hey, we have a new widget, we want you to try it. We have a new light, we have a new thing. We've got a couple tests going on here with some equipment. We have a few LED tests going on at the other grow. Just here's some equipment, run it side by side, see what's going on. Just trying to dial in what's new.
How often do you feel like those are wins, and how often do you feel like those are exercises in education?
We've had a couple wins, but they're usually more educational sessions. Some of the new LED stuff has turned out to be a pretty good win, and as we're walking through, we're making some changes here. You'll be able to see, So
sweet, let's check it out.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a little overstuffed in here at this point. The construction that's happening in the room over there is delaying the transfer of these giant veg plants, and so they're having to kind of condense them, and all this next round of veg plants that's for another room that needs to move into those spots is rooted and needs space. So we had to condense all the moms, and where they're just literally scraping for every inch we can.
Yeah.
They've almost finished the work over there. They should be done tomorrow, and then the second those guys walk out, they're going to be
Plants go in before the paint gets dry.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's underestimated in facilities like this is like the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Like a couple days here or there on a construction deadline, and it changes your entire flow of your whole operation.
And I think that also decides, you talk about how much of this equipment that you try actually works. Well,
Yep.
I mean, how do you really test the light? Are you going to take down the whole room and throw up a whole room of LEDs and run a full? How long does it take to install it? How long does it take to run it? So what is the real results that these guys get back? Okay, cool, I put up 4 lights in my 60 light room and this corner did good, so let's go in for $1 million. Right?
So he's hitting the nail on the head. And what we found is that never works. So over at the other grow, we have 2 small rooms, and they're smaller, 15 lights. So it's not a huge, investment to light it up, and it's controllable. And they're opposite each other, so we can literally have a head-to-head A/B comparison. We're not just throwing some shit in and getting a little bit of data. We really know what we did. And then once we're sure in those rooms, then we built a outfit. I think it's 105 was the room down there. We outfitted it, and then we saw again that the results proved, and then we invested again, just incrementally moving it forward. So you're not, like you said, you get 4 heavy plants and throw $1 million at something.
It's tough because you look at other consumables, a bakery, a commercial bread bakery. Every day they're not all right, the flour rep came by and we're trying this new high yeast blend, so we're going to run it. And then the next week later, they're all right, high yeast didn't work, we're going to the low yeast. It doesn't work like that, because every bread loaf needs to be the same, because they know how many loaves of bread go on a rack, how many racks go on a pallet, how many pallets go in a truck, right? So, these businesses that are starting to mature, they have, they know how many point of sale things they have. They know how many eighths are packaged. They know how many this, they know how many that. Like, can you really afford to take that big of a chance on some of this stuff? I mean, what is the realistic expectation of trial and error on some of this stuff? And some of these buildings get so big, it actually becomes prohibitive. I mean, we're not steering a little boat anymore. We're steering a cruise ship, right? And a cruise ship takes 10 miles to turn. So, you know, when some fast-talking rep comes in and is like, hey, try this, we're gonna get you 100 pounds of light, whatever, right? Like, yeah, sure, that sounds great, but how does the real actually
How do you actually
road?
do it?
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you said, it's all about small scale, controlled viability. All right, this is proved out at a small scale, let's prove it out at a slightly larger scale, and then look at how to integrate properly for a true scale up of those pieces. Yeah. And being in the hydro industry, this is stuff we see all the time. We're in and out of grows all over the country, indoor, outdoor, greenhouse, all different sizes and scales, and you see a lot of people struggle with that. Well, I really want to switch to LEDs, and I've got these 7 different ones in different places in my greenhouse, and I'm not sure which I like better. So to see that like clear, trackable line of research and development to control your facilities, so you know, all right, these plants here are going to get me this many can of cigars in the end.
Yep.
That's a really big nut to crack and a huge information flow to control.
For the veg lighting, deciding on this light, you know, we went through a couple different iterations, and over at the other place we would take, you know, like you said, we would dedicate a bay, and that one bay we would put a new lighting system, and now we had 4 controls and then 1 variable, and we'd be able to see, okay, is that one bay performing differently than the other bays, right? And that was, you know, how we landed on this particular light for our veg setup, but it took a while. You know, we started back in the day with T5, just like everybody else.
Right.
And that's hot and sucks, you know, and then you try and find something that works better. This room right here needed the most amount of work. It was the first room built at this facility by the first owner who owned it before the guys we bought it from. And it was designed by somebody out of Colorado who just showed up and says, I'm gonna build you 2 rooms, you know, your veg room and your flower room, and here's your money vault. And then they left, and then the poor guys were just kind of struggling to do anything with it. And there was the one flower room. They had the tables originally, I think were like yay tall. Wow. Yeah, I know, right? And so we came in, we cut them, we fixed the floors. So far we've left the lights, but that's one area that we are changing. They're adding in some additional outlets so that we can bring in the same LEDs that we're running in the last room, just because we started in the small room, we liked it there, we saw it over there, and this room needed help.
When you guys come across an asset,
Yeah.
right, how do you determine, A, its viability,
Yep.
and how do you determine the chart or the course that you chart to go about these types of projects? Because when you start off describing what you have going on here, it sounds like a real mess.
Yeah.
But, you know, looking around here and looking at the stuff on the shelf, and it's not very messy. So
Right.
how do we go from A to
You
B?
ever see those like home improvement shows that talk about like having good bones? You know, it's kind of the same thing. You know, if it has the right infrastructure, you know, if you've got at least drains in the right place, you don't have to tear up all the floors. If the walls are at least in the generally the right place, we don't have to rebuild the building. You know, little tweaks can be made operationally to get it to flow if you have the power and the infrastructure to do it. You go to some of these places and, you know, it's okay, we need to stop and just redo the whole thing. And at that point, you might as well have started from scratch, because the premium for buying a cannabis facility is high. And if you have to basically wipe the slate with it, you know, you're paying for the paper at that point. But this place had pretty good bones, and all we really had to do was really tune it up. You know what I mean? There was just slight tweaks, irrigation, fans, some lights, and some operations, and we were, doubled the production.
And what, for this Vegas market specifically, your home base, what made it more attractive to right someone else's wrong versus wholesale more product from someone else?
The ability to control your destiny and have something that people want, because there's a lot of weed out there, but there's not a lot of weed that people want for the right amount of money, if that makes any sense, right? So people come into the store, they either want the highest THC, the lowest price, or the best weed. Those are kind of the three customers you've got. And if you don't have one of those things, you don't have anything. But if we can control it, not only do we have a better cost of production than paying a premium from somebody else, but we figure we can do it as good or better than anybody else in town. And then we can have the best, the highest, and the cheapest all in our hand.
So all in all, the plug and play aspect of this being an existing facility ready to go was so appealing. You're like, we can make these tweaks.
Check this out. Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No.
But it came with 1,000 pounds of weed, and we even found it. Remember we talked about the best or whatever?
Yeah.
That just ended up being the cheap weed. So we plugged that need with 1,000 pounds of weed that came with the facility while we invested in getting the other levels taken care of.
Wow.
So
Perfect.
That's a win.
yeah,
Never heard of
win-win. Let's rock and roll. Time goes by fast.
You know, like
Right?
these buildings started out as wagon trail. It's 2
it was a tumbling gym. It was just an empty floor.
It's 2 stories and like 8 rooms on each floor now. And when we started there, it was 4 rooms and 1 story. And he started out with 1 controller. We came back a couple months later to check in on it. He's like, "Oh, we're adding the mezzanine and this, that, whatever." And every time we would come back and visit, they were always doing more and more stuff. And then it was, "Oh, hey, now the new retail is open. Come look at the new medicine store." And you go in the medicine store, the first week it's open, and one of the first things you see is information for their next new store. So store 1's barely open a week, and then they're already advertising for store 2. So like for us, on manufacturer side, just like you, we get to hear a lot of talk, right?
Oh, yeah.
And not a lot of people are able to see that kind of stuff through. And if you've been in this long enough, a lot of these projects were in phases, right? And you hear about some of these monster projects, and you start with phase 1. There's a lot of guys that never made it to phase 2. A lot of guys never made it out of phase 1.
We're standing in an example of that. So you're at the start of phase 2 of a grow that guy sold before he got a chance to build phase 2 because he couldn't do it. We're about to go to phase 3 of what these guys intended to build, but couldn't get this successful enough to do it, right? And so it happened twice here already, that same story.
So yeah, it's like 3rd time's the charm coming through here. And it's like, so what makes you different, and why can't investors buy it?
Why can't investors
Buy it.
Oh, buy it?
Why can't I go off the shelf and buy whatever you have?
I always equate it to like a race car and a race team, right? Like you can show up, you can go to the pits, you can take pictures of the cars, you can even go to the manufacturers and probably buy a motor, you know what I'm saying, and buy everything. But to build a team and have the skill set that's innate in those people to be able to actually show up on a Sunday and win a race is what makes the difference. And that's really what it is. It's the same thing with, I guess, anything that requires planning and patience. It's the long game. You talked about turning a boat, and it's one of the reasons I like this, because the end result that you get of opening that bag and where we're successful is 6 months worth of decisions and people working and energy and trial and effort and sweat and work, and it shows at that last minute. So when you ask like why were we successful and other people weren't, I don't know why they weren't, but we can kind of talk about what we did and why we made it there. And it goes back to, I think, that we were involved, that the people who started this company knew what they were doing, right? It was me, Bob, and Larry. And Bob used to be the mayor, Larry was a councilman, and I was an engineer who grew weed clandestine at night, right? And so we had the weed and engineering side, we had the political side, and we had the capital side to be able to come together and make a successful venture, right? If I just had the knowledge of how to do this, I wouldn't have had the capital to be able to clear the barrier to entry to a modern legal market, right? It started a long time ago, and it was a much lower barrier, but nowadays, if you look at, just imagine going and opening up a facility in New York, the state of New York, the amount of money and energy that it would take to do that, right? So we had a good team, and we started small, and we started at the right time and the right place. Vegas has a lot of energy. There's a lot of growth potential in Las Vegas. There's a lot of branding and marketing potential, and we know that because we've lived here our whole lives. All three of us have been here probably, combined over 100 years, you know what I mean, with those guys involved. So we've got a lot of history in the town, and we know kind of how this place plays into the national scene. And so they saw the opportunity to get into a new and emerging industry that they were curious about. Like, when in the lifetime are we going to be able to do something like this, right? And I said the same thing. Like, I've been in this my whole life, when I never thought in my lifetime that we would have the opportunity to do this. So we're coming at it from two separate angles, but met in the middle, and started off with the growth. They knew that it was a weed business, and they needed somebody who knew weed, right? And so I provided that. The genetics, and like Mike said, that first tumbling gin, we just designed it, built it out, and we built it out successfully. What we penciled in terms of, okay, we're going to have, like I said, we have this many rooms, we have this many plants, this many grams, it's going to make this much money. You know, the metrics played out in reality based on what we had planned, and we were able to deliver on what we promised. And when we brought the weed to the shelves early on in the marketplace, and you'll see, I'm sure you guys know there's a lot of other markets, it starts off with not very good product, right? A lot of people can't come into a space and hit that bullseye right off the bat. And we were able to come in at the high end of this market and maintain that. And through that, we gained a lot of traction locally, and a lot of recognition, and we saw the writing on the wall with the whole recreational wave that was coming behind the medical wave, right? And it was do or die, evolve or be eaten sort of thing. So we looked around and what are we going to do, right? This is Vegas, and we're going to go big or go home, right? And so the guys came up with the idea of Planet 13. That was Bob and Larry's brainchild. I was in the back going, hey, we just need more grow. We just need more grow. They're probably better at telling the story, but that was the one time where I was like, I don't know about this, guys, but I got you. We'll build it. And so we had a super aggressive timeline to get it open before BizCon 2018, I think. No, 2017. Was it 2018? 17? Okay. Feels like forever ago. But, that day we had everybody start coming in from the convention, and just, the look on everybody's face. We were like, okay, this was worth it. This was a worthwhile, which you'd say pain, because it was a serious pain to get that going. To finance it, we went public. A lot of people talk about, corporate cannabis or this big money coming into town, and that's not what, we were the opposite of that. Like, we're from the town, and we went out to get financing to be able to take our vision to a level that was above our means, you know what I mean? And we wanted to find like-minded individuals who believed in the vision of, a experiential retail component and top quality service and top quality products at a great price, right? And that's what we try and provide. We have the local store and we have the strip store, and they both cater to different markets, but we do our best to understand who those people are that patronize our facilities, and we want to do our best to accommodate them, give them what they're looking for.
That's amazing. I really love the way you guys kind of came about in an opposite direction of a lot of people, and a lot of big money people try and put these things together chasing the dollar, and they're missing those key components, and they're hiring master growers that have grown 3 lights or 5 lights and have no real experience. And beyond that, they're not integrated into the project. They don't have this passion to grow it, because whatever, they're going to be there as long as they're there. They could be let go at any minute. They're just another master grower in a long line of churn in so many of these types of facilities. And to see that you're, from the beginning, the cultivator involved in the everyday life and the everyday action and paying attention to every component, is so vastly different than so many facilities we see. And we see so many growers start out that way, and they don't have the infrastructure support of those other components of your partners.
Yep.
And so they find themselves wearing 30 different hats and not being able to stay focused on the grow. And some of the most talented cultivators in the world are stuck behind a computer trying to figure out something they don't want to learn.
Payroll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you've gotten to carry this passion. I really like that.
And not only me, but Bob and Larry, if you go to Planet, their offices are on the top floor overlooking the floor. They're there every day in the morning, sometimes before the sun gets up, and they are involved in the business every day. They don't sit, this isn't just some business venture that they fly in and, oh, my investments are doing well today, and they go off and collect the check. No, they're literally grinding every single day. every day they're pointing out, okay, you know, that needs to get painted. We need to fix this. I don't like how long this line is. What are we going to do? I heard somebody complaining about that. What are we going to do to fix it? You know, you think about it like, you know, like Steve Wynn used to be at the Wynn, you know, walking around making sure the place was to his standard, not to anybody else's. Like, is this good enough for me? This is my place. I live here, right? And that was his whole deal. You go there now, and it's not a bad hotel, but it feels like a corporate hotel. Like, it doesn't have the same level of care and attention to detail that you had when the person who was running it owned it. Right now, it's a diffused responsibility, and like you said, it's either people just doing something, doing a job, or they're doing the best job they can, but they don't have the same touch.
It loses its personality.
That's the word, personality. Yeah, and luckily, you know, I've had the support to be able to, when they ask me to, like, you know, go, hey, help us run this dispensary, help us go build California, help us go build Florida, whatever it is. I've got people like Tony, who you guys met earlier, and Steven over at the other place, who've been with, like, I've known Steven since I was 5. You know, I went to high school with him. He used to trim with me in the black market for years. You know what I mean? He worked after his normal job while we were building the other grow, just, you know, for fun, just to help out, you know, and now he's running the whole place. And I couldn't do what I do now without the support from the guys. But yeah, building it up.
Yeah, and I do want to say that Tony was so amazing and so passionate, and you don't see people like that aren't at the top level often that invested personally in the care of the plant. And that really, really stood out to me. And he's like, well, I learned it because Chris won't have it any other way. And so it's that top down, like, no, this is the conviction that we're building this business around. And that's the thing that speaks to me as a consumer, that, like, when I'm out and about wanting to choose my cannabis flower flying into Vegas, this is the vibe that I'm looking for.
So I said earlier, you know, recognizing the intent that we also like to follow in our own lives. You know, you find that good craft cannabis being grown, and you see what's behind it and why it is so good, is because the people that are actually producing it, their hearts are completely invested. You know, yeah, Tony, he was definitely that guy. He shined a bright light today.
Most definitely, and I smoke everything we produce. You know, it's
me too.
Absolutely, and so does everybody here. We make sure that every lot that we produce, that we're sending an ample amount of, you know, we call them trials, you know, over to the shop, so that the people who produce the product have a chance to try the different lots and batches and varieties that we produce, so they know that, okay, this is why we do these things. This is still good, you know, and they're happy with what they're doing at work, you know. And if I go to the store and I pick up something and I take it home, you know, I'm going to notice right off the bat if where we're failing or where we need to tune something up, and being able to go back into the data and figure out, you know, how can we make everything better. So yeah, I'll show you some of that.
Let's carry on.